Hey everyone, welcome to season 11 of the Tension Podcast. We're a show that acknowledges most of life and faith is lived in the tension between the two extremes. Each week we look at what many of us were taught growing up in evangelical churches. We weigh it against what our current culture is saying, and we try to find what Jesus has for us in the tension between the two. If we haven't met, my name is Jonathan Carone, and we're joined as always by our co-host, Mr. Eric Williams. Eric, go ahead and say hey to the people.
What's up? I don't know. Obviously I know when all of these are releasing, but I'm not quite sure when this one is releasing. But I'm already tired. I'm just tired. Tired of things.
It's because you have the Black Plague right now.
Well, other than that, but I'm also generally just tired. Tired of the, I don't know. I don't want to use the buzzword, but the rhetoric, It's just becoming tough. I just wish Jesus would come back.
You're getting better at these subtle tie-in jokes at the front end.
It's like I read. It's like I read the the script beforehand.
Hey, one thing I know you're not tired about is talking about yourself. So we didn't do this last week.
Uh-oh.
How's the softball team? Where are you ranked currently?
Still number one. Still number one
number one.
Number one. We're fine. No big deal. We're good. It's great. Everything is.
Everyone's
great.
Coming for you, but you're not letting them have it.
Yeah. Just old man softball. No big deal. It's pretty competitive, actually. It's not that bad. I know it's kind of I don't know. You're similar because if I was hey, tell me about disc golf, and most people go, disc golf? Are you kidding? But it's actually a pretty intense game.
So. I told Nicole about I have a standing round on Thursdays. We record these episodes on Fridays. Last night, my wife asked me, how'd disc golf go today? And I just looked at her. And then I drew out the holes that I had I had the best round on this course I've ever thrown, except for 2 holes where I had a triple bogey and a +6 sextuplet bogey, whatever it would be. Well, and so I drew a diagram of all the different things that I threw. And so, I could talk about that too, but no one cares. So, hey, if you're new with us, this season we are looking at the idea that cultural Christianity is killing the American church. This week is week 5, so we've officially hit the back half of the season. And if you're just joining us, here's how we've defined cultural Christianity. It's important for us to say this on the front end so that we're all on the same page as we go into the conversation. If we're not on the same page now, we're not going to get to the same place because we're on different roads. The first definition we've had is cultural Christianity is spiritually immature Christians who have been discipled more by evangelical culture than the actual Bible. And then the second / complementary definition we have is cultural Christianity is full of Christians who are more concerned with applying their Christian preferences to the culture than they are in achieving unity in Christ with those who may have different perspectives or preferences. If you want to hear the first 4 episodes, I suggest you start with the first one of this season and then build up to here because we kind of build on everything as we go. We've talked about how the intertwining of mean-spirited politics and the church are turning people away. We hit on how there's no place for moderates in the American church. We discussed how the language we use around abortion makes people feel not safe in church. And then last week, we talked about the subtle difference between listening to respond to people and listening to love them and how getting that wrong makes people think we actually don't care about them. So if you want to catch up, those are the 4 we've had this season. Before we get into today, we ask this every week, but we're going to ask it again. If you like the show, please leave us a rating wherever you listen or watch. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, it'd be a huge help if you wrote up a small review. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button on today's video. Okay, that's the intro. Now we get into the good stuff.
Here we go.
I'm going to be honest on the front end for today's episode. This entire topic is a soapbox issue for me. I tried to be reserved while writing this, and I try to let the data kind of speak for what it is. I'm going to try to do that today, but this is one of those nails on a chalkboard type of issues for me. I just flat out hate it. I'll be completely honest on the front. If you're like, well, Jonathan, you're biased against this. Yeah, I am. I am. It's just when you come from one side of something and you realize it was crap and you go to the other side, I'm fully on this other side at this point on this because I think today is such an incomplete version of the gospel that so many of us, we were taught, but then it does not bring the fulfillment that we're supposed to experience in Jesus.
Sure.
So essentially, the big idea today is that cultural Christianity's obsession with the rapture and end times theology has led people to spend more time hoping Jesus comes back at the expense of joining him in the reconciliation of the world back to where it was originally meant to be. The disregard for current events is leading people, especially young people, to think the church does not care about the world around them. And here's another way for me to say that. Focusing on the hope of heaven while disregarding the world being on fire shows younger generations you don't care about them. And before we get too far into this, I want to say a couple things explicitly in the front end. Number one, it's okay to hope Jesus comes back soon. Number two, it's okay to want to have eternity with Jesus start today. Number three, it's okay to believe that one day with Jesus is better than 1,000 elsewhere.
Oh, wow. Wow. Got me. I just had a flashback right there. Anybody else have a little 90s
Better
Spidey
is
sense?
one day in your course.
Oh,
Sorry.
got it.
This episode is not about wanting those things. It's about being so focused on those things that you at best disregard what's going on around us, or at worst cheered on because it means we're getting closer to Jesus coming back.
Yeah, do you want to know my soapbox issue here?
Sure.
Because this is
always.
something that I think that is either missed or this would be an angle that is for me is like, not only is the general disregard, it's like, I hope Jesus comes back, and it becomes like this excuse for like general disregard for the world burning here. But I think on an even more like nefarious side, it's easy to justify poor behavior now. It's easy to justify your political leanings now. It's easier to justify, like we talked about, the cultural Christianity side of like, I'm going to apply my personal political, or what call it political, whatever, non-biblical. I'm going to apply my personal feeling
preference.
Yeah. Or as some TikTok Bible scholars say, I negotiate with the text, right? I'm going to, I say, oh, I'm going to apply this because Jesus is coming back or coming back soon or whatever. You use it as an excuse to essentially be an a-hole to people or not care about their plight. And it's like, oh, that's just that to me is my soapbox issue, is when you want to apply using the Bible in a way it was never intended to be used, which we could probably do a whole episode on this, but that would be much more along the lines of using God's name in vain than somebody saying God, right? Like that's the thing.
Can we say that on here?
I don't know. You can mute that out. Or somebody go, Jesus Christ, right?
I'll bleep it, but
yeah. So like,
caught me off guard there. I don't know if we can or not.
Well, so instead of, I don't use the Lord's name in vain because I don't say JC, I don't say geez, I say geez, or I say gosh, or I say gosh darn. But instead, you're going to use the name of the Lord to justify saying and doing bad things, or holding back from doing the right thing.
So I'm going to paint a picture today, and all the links and sources are going to be in the show notes. This is going to be an overview and not a complete picture, because we could spend an entire season painting this full, complete picture, but I at least want to present the idea to you. And Eric, you're going to have thoughts through this, but let me paint the full picture before you jump in. So just hold back, rear up, like get all the energy, and then I'm going to release you when we're done. And you can
know
go
what?
full out.
I'll just be like, I'll be in the debate. I'll be looking over at you, and I'll be writing my notes down, and I'll be like holding underneath my chin and smiling, and just like when you make dumb things, just be exasperated.
You just accidentally dropped a GD. Just don't accidentally drop the MF, or like she almost did.
Oh yeah, yes, true.
All right, so buckle up. Here we go. Gen Z is the least religious generation in American history. As of 2022, 44% of Gen Z has stated they are a religious nun. For those who don't know, that doesn't mean they're Catholic nuns. That means they have no relationship with religion at all. That might be atheist, agnostic, or they simply don't think about religion. They have no opinion on it. According to the Great Opportunity Report, quote, the majority of disaffiliated youth did not go through a crisis of faith or intellectually reject church teachings. They left because they just weren't interested in the Christian life they saw. In an article on Sojourners, it's written, quote, though we cannot fully answer what Gen Z is seeing that makes them disinterested in the Christian life, we know this generation cares about what is happening beyond the walls of the church and boundary lines of their faith community. So with that in mind, let's look at what Gen Z cares about. Nearly 1/3 of Gen Z is regularly engaged in activism or social justice work. That number jumps to 40% when you look at just the college students that are still a part of Gen Z. Over half, 51% of Gen Zers have participated in rallies or protests. 61% have volunteered with an organization they care about within the past year. 62% said moral and ethical issues drive their activism, and 51% said it was their personal experience as the driving force. When it comes to their primary concerns, 57% care about cost of living, 55% care about healthcare access, 52% care about affordable housing, 47% care about climate change initiatives, 42% care about gun control, 40% care about income inequality, and 39% care about racial equity. And I could keep going, but you kind of get the point. Gen Z cares about the things impacting their everyday lives. And every single thing that they care about is impacted by the systems that were built around us. Okay. That's the Gen Z side. So now let's flip to the other side and look at evangelical culture. 1/3 of evangelicals don't think the Bible has lessons about the environment, and only 34% of evangelicals think climate change is at least somewhat of a serious problem. Only 32% of evangelicals think the earth is getting warmer because of human activity. By comparison, only 42% of religious Americans, that means religious in general, not just evangelicals, say climate change is at least a very serious problem compared to 72% of the least religious adults. So there's a giant disconnect there between religious people and non-religious people when it comes to caring about the planet. According to R. Carrie Brown and Angela, I think it's Kaiser, it might be Kaiser, I apologize if she's listening and I get that wrong, or if her family members are listening, in an article published by Cambridge University, quote, evangelicals are more likely than others to oppose government programs aimed at reducing poverty or racial inequality. Evangelicals are also less likely than others to believe that the federal government should guarantee health insurance for all citizens. They continued by saying evangelicals, quote, tend to believe that societal problems result from sinful individual behaviors. Societal redemption, therefore, is only possible when individuals commit themselves to Jesus Christ. Because salvation is viewed as an individual responsibility, members of the religious right emphasize individual accountability in all aspects of life, including healthcare. Therefore, those who identify with the religious right tend to view social problems as a consequence of moral decay and attribute their causes to individual failure rather than societal dysfunction. This strong emphasis on individualism and personal accountability is fundamentally incompatible with political or social interventions that address systemic or structural forces. Now, yes. Eric, before I go any further,
sure.
Is this a fair description of the general evangelical view of the world that you have been around for the past 20 years?
Yes, I would say so. And I think in some cases, because I know I haven't been in quite as much of like the SBC evangelical spaces as you have, or at least the overt, like I'm in much more of like the purpose driven SBC, you know, the Rick Warren SBC, where it's like, you don't see it on the front end, but their retirement is run through the SBC, healthcare, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I would say that in the a little bit more step in from that side, it's something that's definitely spoken about in the hallways in the church office, or in the quote unquote like safe life groups, men's Bible studies and whatnot. Like that's the stuff that's said. And what I'm seeing more and more are the people that used to, just keep that to what happens around the water cooler on church staff, are now posting more about it on Facebook and letting that,
or the Slack channels on church chats or whatever.
Right, Slack channels. That's the thing, is like your beer and Bible studies with just the safe people. You're saying and believing these things, and I think that it's very closely tied to things that we've talked about before about American exceptionalism and bootstrapping and all that other kind of stuff. Is like, I think this is a very American evangelical view, because of that idea of manifest destiny, all of the things that America was founded on. And that's why it's just so difficult with this cultural Christianity, when you're taking your American patriotism and mixing that in and allowing that to influence your Christianity.
So we've talked about this individualistic idea within evangelical culture, and we've talked about what Gen Z cares about and how those are kind of diametrically opposed right now. And here's where I want to tie it back together to this piece that frustrates the crap out of me. According to Pew Research Center, 47% of Christians believe we are currently living in the quote end times. So about half. When you break it down to evangelicals, 63% believe we are living in the end times, nearly 2 out of 3. End times meaning Jesus is coming back soon, end of the world, that type of stuff. When asked if they believe Jesus would come back in their lifetime, only about 19% say they believed it definitely or probably would not occur during their lifetime. But in fairness, only about 10% believe that it would definitely or probably be during their lifetime. And then 27% said they weren't sure. So only about 20% say it definitely won't be. 10% said it will be. 27% not sure. And then there's some stuff in the middle there.
Okay, hold on. Pause. Before we keep going on this one, this is what is just crazy to me in some of this stuff. Like, ignore the historical fact of like, well, Paul thought we were in the end times, and that was 2,000 years ago. But like, how can you have any semblance of history and go through and go, you know what? I think we're in the end times. Why? Oh, well, inflation and the Democrats and the this and the that and the migrants and the immigrants coming across and poisoning the blood of our country. And you're like, let's rewind a little bit. Do you think World War II during the Holocaust? I would call that a little worse, right? Right. Oh, okay. No, but that's not what it happened. Okay, great. Let's go back a little bit further. What about during the Black Death, the plague? Maybe. No, that wasn't it. Okay, all right. Like, think about all of the atrocities that have happened, and we're sitting here like, well, I can't afford my groceries, and gas is over $3.50, and these Democrats are ruining the country. Jesus is coming back soon because we are in the end times. I'm like, guys, stop it. Just stop it.
So I'm trying to pull it together here. When asked if the world would get worse before Jesus comes back, which is a view consistent with premillennialism, 44% of evangelicals said the world would get worse before Jesus comes back. So here's where I'm going to tie this all together. If a core piece of your belief system is that things have to get worse before Jesus comes back, and if you have a core belief that sinful individuals are at the center of all bad things and not sinful systems designed by those sinful people, you are inherently incentivized to not focus on improving the systems around us. Gen Z and the people who are younger than us in general believe the systems around us developed by the people evangelicals would believe are sinful and depraved are harmful and need to be reformed. Gen Z wants to reform the systems. The tension between those two beliefs is at the core of why young people think Christianity is irrelevant to their lives. They want to reform the systems because they believe it's the systems that are the issue. Fundamentalist evangelicals think the world has to get worse for Jesus to come back, and the only way for things to get better is if he comes back. So there is no incentive to work on the systems that have been made by sinful people, and so they just let it burn because they're hoping Jesus will come back soon.
So you could take a step further into that, and we've talked about it previously on the podcast. The I don't know, maybe 1998 movie with Casper Van Dien in it, the Omega Code. I'm serious. Have you watched it yet, or are you just?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
I can't.
You and Nicole need to hate watch. Just figure out a day where you're going to be like, you know what, babe, it's time to hate watch something. We're gonna get some comfort food.
No chance of marital time tonight. Let's just go watch hate watch a movie from 1998.
Hate watch a movie from 1998 with some of the best acting you've ever seen. The whole plot of that movie is that they figured out, like, through the ancient Omega Code that was written in the Bible, like, of the events that need to happen before Jesus comes back. And so they start to put a plan in motion to intentionally cause these events to happen so that the end times can happen. So, I mean, like, it's not too far of a stretch. Yes, the movie is a stretch, but it's not too far of a stretch to go, you know what? The only way things are going to get better if Jesus comes back. So I'm kind of actually rooting for the bad stuff because that means Jesus will come back.
You saw that happen when Hamas attacked Israel. You had your fundamentalist Christians stand up for Israel right away, for sure.
Yep.
But in the conversations off of Facebook, because I heard people say this, they're saying, "Oh, this is just a sign that Jesus is coming back." If Iran gets involved with this, and then Russia gets involved, then that's the beast or the dragon and the whatever and the whatever and the whatever come together. And that just
Gog and Magog and they're blah, blah, blah.
And so it's like, on one hand, they're like standing with Israel. On the other hand, they're like, oh, maybe this means that Jesus is coming back soon because of this, this, and this. And they're like trying to find the cherry-picked version of Revelation that really wasn't a thing until the 1800s.
Right.
And force current events into that grid instead of saying, you know what? Hamas killed a lot of Jewish people in Israel, and that's terrible. Mm-hmm. And Netanyahu is also doing some pretty terrible things to Palestinians. And it's a humanitarian crisis in the Middle East right now. Yeah. And instead of hoping Jesus comes back, we need to work on something so that we can get people safe in that area.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
It's just protect Israel.
And having some semblance of of an objective, logical opinion of, like, just people shouldn't be killing people. You should have You should have the right to exist and defend yourself. You should also, retaliation is not a two wrongs make a right situation. So neither is right. You're killing people. Stop it.
So what do we do? How do we get past this idea that is so prevalent? I mean, I went to a college that has the Tim LaHaye Ice Center and the LaHaye Student Lounge, or whatever it's called. Tim LaHaye's the guy who wrote the freaking Left Behind books. So the Left Behind books funded a core piece of my college experience at Liberty University. So this is something that was like, I devoured the Left Behind books in middle school. Absolutely. I remember being at the beach and reading like 2 or 3 of those books in the same week, because it was such a big part of what I grew up in. And everything was like, well, if the Lord will and the creek don't rise and Jesus don't come back by Sunday, we'll see you next week. Like that type of mindset, like cheering on the rapture. And what I think we have to continue to repeat and acknowledge, salvation in Jesus is not just for the afterlife. Salvation is our opportunity to join Jesus in the restorative work he's already doing. Colossians 1:19 and 20 says, "For God in all his fullness was pleased to live in Christ, and through him God reconciled everything to himself. He made peace with everything in heaven and on earth by means of Christ's blood on the cross." In Matthew 5:6, Jesus talks about, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Jesus himself encourages those who thirst for righteousness And many of us have this incorrect view of righteousness. My favorite definition, we've mentioned this on here before, is from the book, The Gospel According to Jesus, where Pastor Chris whatever it is, argues seeking his righteousness is about being an active agent for Jesus's restorative justice in all of creation. So part of our salvation is joining Jesus in making the world right, while knowing it's not going to get done till he gets back. But we don't neglect it while we hope he comes back. Yeah. It's like saying, I'm going to continue eating like absolute dog poop until the next session of my workout plan starts. So for the next, the next session of the gym doesn't start till 3 weeks from now. So I'm going to eat as much pizza and candy as I can for the next 3 weeks, and then I'll fix it tomorrow. I'll fix it in 3 weeks. No, we start on it today, knowing it's not going to happen fully until Jesus is back reigning here on earth.
Well, and let me give you another analogy along the same lines of the hypocrisy that I see. So we've talked about it before too, of like the idea of living for this world or going to heaven. You know, like I can't wait till I get to heaven. I used to be in a church plant group with a group of people that they'd always talk about the new body they would get in heaven. You know, that's what they were loving. It's like, oh man, I hate this tent, this earthly tent, and I can't wait for my new body in heaven and everything like that. And it's like, imagine how extremely callous we get when we talk about not caring about certain things now because, you're going to go to heaven anyway. So if you're addressing somebody, I would say that the Venn diagram would be a circle of the type of person that is like, is an avid gun owner, 2A, do not be infringed, all of that kind of stuff. And like, they're posting the memes about how, how well they sleep at night, knowing that they care about their family's life more than the life of an intruder, all these sorts of things. Like I see this from these guys that are like, yeah, you know what, you're going to meet Jesus tonight type of deal like that. When it's like, why, I would say back, why do you feel the need to protect your family if going to heaven is actually the best thing that could ever happen? So if you die, you go to heaven. Why would you protect yourself from anything? And it's like, oh, whoa, that's a crazy idea. Why would you protect yourself from anything? Because you want to, why wouldn't you just go out and just be completely reckless and irresponsible, knowing that if you die, it's actually better for you because you go to heaven? Now, I would say, 90 whatever percent of people would look at you and go, no, that's not it. That's taking it too far. But when it's like, well, we don't really need to worry about this or that or the other thing because Jesus is going to come back and we can't make it perfect and it's not going to be perfect until Jesus comes back.
And it's not even that they explicitly say we can't fix it till Jesus gets back or we don't need to worry about it. It's that they say it's not fixable until Jesus comes back, so they're not even going to try.
Or it's not it's almost like an undertone of not my job, right? Yeah. It's that person's personal responsibility to fix it on their own. Or, I'm going to pray for it and pray that God fixes it instead of what can I actively do?
It's the whole thoughts and prayers idea.
Yep. Yeah.
Like, so we're not going to worry about fixing it because we can't. So we're just going to pray for that thing, forgetting the fact that prayer without action is dead.
Right. Yep.
And that the way that God works here on earth throughout biblical history, the most often way Jesus works here on earth, or God works on earth, sorry, I keep saying Jesus, is through human beings. Yep. The way he does most of his stuff is through the actions of human beings following him.
Yep, exactly. So it is such an interesting take also with the personal responsibility. It's like other people have personal responsibility to get out of their mess. I benefit from the good things that I've done in my personal responsibility. But when it comes to the parable of the Good Samaritan, apparently I'm not reading that as my personal responsibility to help others. So that, I think that's one of the biggest things in this conversation that bugs the heck out of me, where I can stand on the benefits of my own personal responsibility, ignoring the fact that I've benefited from so many other things in my life that have gone right, regardless of how well I've done. And I could point to the other person and say, well, you are not doing well, or you're suffering. because of something you did wrong, and ignoring the fact that I also have a responsibility to care for the neighbors in my life. I have a responsibility, again, in this political season, to pray for my persecutors, to love my enemies, to all of those sorts of things. And it's like, nope, FJB. Nope, it's Joe and the Ho. Nope, it's all these different things that you're gonna throw out there and be okay with when they are not compliant. You're gonna pick and choose even your own internal moral compass. You're picking and choosing about personal responsibility. So of course that's going to extend to how you're going to pick and choose how you apply the Bible.
But I want to take it one step further.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We say it's personal responsibility because the only way things get better, there's two ways things get better. Jesus comes back, or we give our lives to Jesus and we make good decisions based off of what he tells us to do. Those are the two choices. And we admit that humans are depraved and that humans are sinful and that that's the whole reason we need Jesus, right? But yet there is a disconnect between the idea that depraved, sinful people are the ones who created the systems around us. We do not and are unwilling to look at the idea of institutional sin.
Ooh.
We have made the gospel and salvation such a personal thing that we are unwilling and unable to even entertain the concept of corporate or institutional sinning. By corporate, I don't just mean businesses, I mean like as a group, corporately as a whole. And because we focus so much on individual responsibility while believing that the world around us has to get worse in order for Jesus to come back, there is no motivation to work on those corporate sinful systems.
Especially if you benefit from them. Especially
Correct.
if you benefit from them. And that's what we ignore is like, I benefit from the system. So even if I can, on some conceptual level, agree that it's not great, I'm not going to change it because I benefit from it.
And the world for everyone else has to get worse before Jesus comes back, but I'm not going to let my world get worse. I'm not going to
let me bring this up. Okay, so one of the first churches that I was involved in leadership, I talked about this before, a small little like conservative town United Methodist church that barely broke 100 on a weekend ever. Was going to go to a second service, and they wanted to do a traditional service and a contemporary service. Everybody who's been through church in the late 90s has probably had the same story. What typically happens? Well, the traditional service has always been at 11 o'clock or whatever, 10:30, the good time on a Sunday morning. And we said, hey, we're going to start a contemporary service, which we're going to try to get younger families in here, try to get younger people in here. Traditional service is mostly filled with older people or people without kids or people that have already grown up in the church. Can we move the traditional service to 9 a.m.? So that way the younger kid service can be at 11. Guess what? All the people that benefited from the 11 o'clock service, they said no. I'm not going to change the system so other people can benefit because it's actually going to be worse for me, even though it's not really going to be worse for me because I've been up for 3 hours by the time it's 9 o'clock, right? Like it doesn't, I'm on a 7 cup of coffee, right? I've mowed the lawn twice in the Midwest. It's like, bro, it would actually be okay for you to move to 9 a.m. You're okay to make space for other people. But no, we're not going to do that because I'm not going to change the system that benefits me.
So the reason I call this a picture is because this isn't a direct A to B logic. You have to see the different pieces and then step back from it to get the full picture. It's all about individual responsibility and individual actions. It's not about corporate things. And we want Jesus to come back so that we can spend time with him forever and he can rule the world because we know that everything will be perfect when he comes back. So there's no motivation to work on the systems around us. We can disagree on the solutions for those systems. I'm okay with that. But the disregard of even working on them because things have to get worse for Jesus to come back, that's the issue. We have to care about the things going on around us. We can hope for Jesus to return and to establish his kingdom here on earth with all the hope we have inside of us. But we still have to do the reconciliation work that he has already started. Salvation is a gift that comes with a responsibility to join Jesus in that reconciliation work. And we can know that it's never going to be complete because of the sin that's in the world, while still doing everything we can to make it as complete as possible. We cannot watch the world burn around us and have our only solution be giving your heart to Jesus and hoping he comes back soon. And unfortunately, in cultural Christianity, that's what it has become. We're not going to fix the world around us. We're going to protect our personal freedoms while we're neglecting the systems around us. And we're going to hope that Jesus comes back soon, because that's what salvation's all about, is spending time in heaven with him. Mm-hmm. It is an incomplete gospel that has negative, harmful effects on our society today. And it is pushing the younger generations as far away from church as they've ever been in American history.
So, do we need to bring up the modern parable of the man who sees the other man on the beach with all the clams? You know that one, right? You've heard that.
I don't.
Sermon. You know that one. It's maybe a clam.
I don't know. I don't think I know this one.
Could be a starfish. Like, it's always some aquatic animal on the beach. There's, a bunch of these starfish out on the beach, and there's just a man feverishly like tossing them back into the ocean one by one. Another man walks up to him. It's always a man, by the way. Another man walks up to him and is like, "What are you doing? There are like thousands of these starfish out here. They're all going to die. There's no way that you could save them all." And the man picks up another starfish and tosses it in the ocean and says, "I just saved that one." Oh, what a parable to say that, yes, we may not be able to save all the starfish around us, but the one in your hands is up to you. You have the responsibility. You have the ability to save that one. So find your starfish and toss them back. I need the organ pad playing behind me as the band walks on stage. pass the plate.
But I mean, as silly as that is, like, it's where I'm at. I was
right. Oh, well, I don't know. Was it you? Yeah, we were talking about this, right? So same thing. Like, I don't want. Well, and you could like pause this and cut this out if it's too personal for you in particular. But it's like, if you're a dog lover and you ever go to like, well, we're going to adopt a dog, and imagine you go to like the shelter and there's 50 dogs. Of course, if you're a dog lover, you're like, I want to adopt them all, but I can't adopt them all. I can't save them all. It's like, the mentality that we have is, well, then don't adopt a single one. I can't save them all. Don't adopt a single one. Turn around and, wipe your feet of it. No, you'd go and you'd be like, okay, what's the one that what is the one that I can give a new home to? Yes, of course. I have to.
I'm literally going to look at dogs this weekend at a rescue.
See, there you go. I have to leave the 99 behind.
See me on YouTube. Hey, here's my promise. On YouTube, in like maybe like 2 or 3 weeks, by the end of the season, hopefully, I will have a little doggy that I can hold up right here and show you all. So that's an incentive to watch on YouTube.
But yeah, so I mean, you might have to leave the 99 behind to rescue the one. Okay.
All right. You're segueing to next week.
Enough of those.
No, you're hitting on next week a little bit. But before we do that, I'm gonna finish up with this. I had a conversation this week with a guy who is 28 years old. He, by his admission, is very spiritual, but not religious at all. He grew up going to church occasionally. He likes the feeling he has when he is in church.
Of course.
He is a very, very nature-minded person. When he is on a hike or on top of a mountain, he feels something. He says and acknowledges he feels something in those moments, and he'd even admit it's probably some type of creator. But his view of the church is that they don't care about the things he cares about. I mean, he's telling me that he has these feel like I'm explaining to him like the stuff we talk about on this show and that we're talking about this season. He goes, yeah, I think if I would have found that church when I was growing up, I think I would have stuck with it.
Imagine.
And it's because he cares about the things going on around us in the world today. It's not just about certain behaviors or looking out for yourself. He has this mindset of, I want to take care of not just the things around me, but the people around me. If you look back at the numbers, 57% of Gen Z care about the cost of living, 55 healthcare access, 52 affordable housing, 42 gun control, 40 income inequality, 39 racial equity. Like, his generation cares about other people in the way that we are taught we are supposed to. I don't know if you saw this, and this might be old by the time this episode comes out, but this week, Rhett from Rhett and Link, about a year ago, they were Christian comedians for the longest time, and they grew up in the church. They were outspoken about their faith. About a year ago, they both talked about how they have deconstructed and left their faith completely. But this week, Rhett put out something. They were talking about a year after making that announcement, what their lives were like. And Rhett had this really great quote that I'm trying to find real quick so I can read it to you because it's so freaking good. He said, your kids are not leaving the church because you didn't train them enough. Your kids are leaving the church because you trained them well enough to develop a sense for truth and justice. You let them read the words of Jesus and they got it. And they recognize that the church doesn't seem to be interested in those words. They're not leaving because they don't know the truth. They're leaving because they do. And there is something inside all of us that is groaning for reconciliation as well, that is groaning for the relationship with our Creator. And this younger generation coming behind us, the piece of that groaning that they have inside of them so much is for the world around them to get better. And unfortunately, cultural Christianity has traded in being God's hand and feet in the culture today, in the society today, working so that everyone would have a better life, life to the full, for a theology and politic that says, nope, you go do you, I'm going to go do me, and we're going to hope that Jesus comes back because nothing's going to get better until he does. And if we can become the people who work to perform Jesus's restorative action here on earth as a part of our salvation led by the Holy Spirit, then the harvest is plenty. God just needs the workers.
Yep.
And it's up to us. If we want to live a full, complete gospel, we have to join in on that restorative work that Jesus came to do. God in all his fullness was pleased to live in Christ, and through him God reconciled everything to himself. He made peace with everything in heaven and on earth by means of Christ's blood on the cross. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. That's the people we have to become if we want to have an impact in our society today. That's it for this week. Like I mentioned earlier, there's so much more to this topic that we didn't get to today. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to us on social or send us an email to continue the conversation. That email is hello@tensionpodcast.com. Eric is at EricW712 on all the major platforms. I am at Jonathan_Caron. Next week, we're going to be talking about a different look at Jesus leaving the 99 and how the way we view that story impacts how we view the world around us. If you want to get that episode when it first comes out, subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast app if you haven't already. If you like the show, do us a favor and rate us and review us wherever you get podcasts. Share this episode with a friend if you found it interesting. As always, thanks for making us a part of your day, and we will talk to you again next week. Have a great week, everybody.